Did you know animators love balls?
If you ever tried to learn animation at any point, I'm sure you'll have come across or been recommended to do the dreaded bouncing ball exercise. This is the one exercise everyone tells you to start with. It's literally everywhere, and there isn't a single animator who can honestly deny its value. But why? Why this exercise? Why balls? And why make them bouncy? Are animators just a bunch of perverts? Yeah, pretty much. That makes sense actually. That's not even surprising. So, a small disclaimer before we start the video. I know this is gonna seem like a very basic topic, but even though this is mainly targeted towards more beginner animators, if you're like a more advanced animator and you're like, I've already done this exercise, this is like useless to me, I promise it's not. And I'm gonna show you some ways to scale the exercise so that it does help you like on your journey, even if you've already done just bouncing balls. And basically it's gonna be useful, I promise. I will make sure that there's at least one thing that you learn or see in a different light. The truth is, the bouncing ball is a great exercise for beginners that helps build fundamentals. It introduces you to the process of animation, to spacing and timing, squash and stretch, arcs, and ultimately gets you a result relatively quickly, which is something all beginners need. Small wins are very important in the beginning. If any of these fundamentals sound strange to you, they're part of a list of 12 animation principles created by Ollie Johnston and Frank Thomas. I'll link some relevant videos on the subject if you'd like to explore it further. But essentially, in learning and displaying these principles, you can be sure that your animations will breathe a lot more life. The bouncing ball is a small way, it's a small gateway to exploring these skills. Now that you think about it, it kind of makes sense. It's such a popular exercise. Okay, so you want to do the bouncing ball exercise. How do you go about it? You might be tempted to just open an animation folder and start animating straight away. Don't do that. Assuming you're a beginner, you don't know exactly like how a ball is supposed to behave. You're not aware of like the spacing or pretty much anything. So what you want to do is just step one, find a reference. So I have here, I just wrote bouncing ball on YouTube. You'll find so many. There are so many animators that have done this and recorded their own references. Ideally, like if you can, record your own, but if you don't want to, you can always use someone else's. So this guy, it's a great reference, super, super clear, and he even like keyframed it afterwards to see all of the frames. So yeah, something like this would be ideal, and you would want to know what the ball is. So for this one, it looks to be like a tennis ball, I think. It's not very clear, but yeah. So it's like on the lighter side, and you can see how many times it's bouncing. You can do this exercise with like different weights of balls. So like a bowling ball would be a lot more. So this one is a rubber ball, I'm pretty sure. This reference is not as good since it's like forward facing. So it doesn't help you see the arcs as easily, even though they're there. But because they're like towards the camera, it'll be a bit harder. So I would suggest to stay away from that for now if you're like a real like beginner. Um, but yeah, since this one's a rubber ball, also you can see the amount of times it's bouncing is like crazy compared to the other one. And then a bowling ball would be like the complete opposite of them and just bounce like two or three times max. Yeah. So after you get your reference, you would analyze it pretty much like what this guy did. Like he keyframed all of the things, and you'll start to notice the patterns of like there's like a ease out here, and then it's easing in and easing out at the apexes of where the ball like reaches at the higher points. And towards the bottom here, it's a bit hard to see because of the YouTube bar, but it's very scarce. Like there isn't any frames here. So it has to be like very quick and abrupt, like ping, ping. And you want hang time up here. And that's pretty much how you create that effect. So after you do that, you can go ahead and do your ball thing. But yeah. you want to keep in mind basically the material. Always keep in mind what are you animating, because that affects so much, like how it's supposed to act. And yeah, you can do like a tennis ball going around. I did a few exercises actually. I did them very quickly, so they're not very good. But I did one that's like bouncing. What's it called? Yeah, this is supposed to be like a heavier ball, and this is like a lighter one. And then one that's going forwards. These are really bad. I did them very quickly just to illustrate my point. But ideally, you would take a lot more time and um, put more thought into your frames and your spacing and everything. But yeah, I want to also show you some examples of what students who have done this, like people who take more time to do it and do it better. So these are Sheridan students. And yeah, this is an exercise that they do where they have like a few bouncing balls interacting with the room. So this would be a very nice variation to do later on. So yeah, it's really good. You can feel pretty much every ball and every material. It feels very believable. I don't know why there's a pendulum at the end. That's so random. But yeah, this is one exercise. And then this is another student. This is so cool. It's like a Rick and Morty thing. But yeah, this is a very, very squishy ball. Comes in, hits the screen, goes out. So yeah, very simple stuff. No need to like overcomplicate it or do anything too hard. It's supposed to be an easy exercise. So yeah, that's all you need to know. Now that all the boring stuff is done, here's the fun part. Like I said before, this exercise scales. This exercise scales. And that means that even though it's basic at first, it actually it's I don't know how to explain it. It scales. It's important, basically. And now that you've learned how to animate balls, I'm gonna teach you how to see them. Da, da, da. Alright, so how do you actually see balls in like actual animation? Okay, so I have here like a pretty cool animation from I think it's called My Witch Academia or Witch Academia, one of the two. I'll play the animation very quickly. I chose a very short clip, so hopefully this doesn't get copyrighted. And yeah, you might be watching this, and I think you can already see where I'm going. There's like a ton of bouncing balls in here. So I went through basically what I did was I went through each frame. Let me actually remove the opacity on this. I went through each frame and I just highlighted the head just because I wanted to see like the trajectory as it's getting bigger. Look at that. It's a bouncing ball. Hang time, the exact same as the bouncing ball where it looks like that. Or you know what I mean, like a little bit better than that, but literally you can see it here. The only difference is it's in 3D space instead of just flat like this. You can see the spacing. This is very like stylized, so they hold certain frames a lot more than others, and you'll see that here. But that's like ultimately up to you and whatever you want to do. So I went through, what's it called? I'm gonna lower the opacity on this, and I went through them and I keyed what's it called? I keyed the head, I keyed this hand, and I keyed her pelvis. Or yeah. And I'll just play those for you all here. Oops, not this one. Just so you can see them with the actual animation. Yeah, dude, these are bouncing balls. I'm sorry. You can't tell me they're not bouncing. These two, maybe these two were, I shouldn't have tracked them together because they're always going to be like opposed to each other since they're technically like attached. But even still, like this is literally just a bouncing ball with extra steps and stylized framing. So they're just holding certain frames longer, and that's all like choice. You don't have to do that unless you want to, and you learn when to do it. But yeah, I just wanted to illustrate the point that even like very complex looking animations like this, they're pretty much just the fundamentals, but very strongly baked with like very good drawings and stuff. But if you have this, if you can just do the bouncing ball itself, you're like almost there. Not really, but like you're a big you're a big part of the way there in terms of animation at least. I also wanted to say that it doesn't necessarily have to be like rounded shaped in order for you to be able to track it. So the head is a very easy thing just to simplify into a sphere or a ball. But I want to show you that you can pretty much turn anything into that. So we can track actually this dragon's head because it doesn't feel like it's supposed to be like a spherical ball, right? But look at this. I'm gonna lower the opacity just a little bit. And we're gonna track it frame by frame. I'll do it like I did what's it called? The girl. That's a dragon? No, it's a ball. It's a ball monster. Look at that. It's literally just a ball getting bigger. Obviously, this doesn't have like the same spacing as a bouncing ball because it's moving like very consistently, and you can see that in the frames itself. But it's still, you can simplify it to that point, and that makes it like very understandable. And if I was to track it the same way I did like on an actual timeline, it would be the same. But this is just to illustrate the point that it's like very, yeah, it's a very simple principle and it's used all the time. Time for my work. So here's an animation that I made. I'm just gonna play it for you so you can see it. It's an animation from a collab that I did. The collab didn't end up happening at all, but that's fine. But yeah, I've just been sitting on this for a while. It's yeah, it's an animation. So yeah, I'll just show you guys how the bouncing ball is in this also. I'll go over it like very briefly since we just went over that in like a much better example. And then I'll show you guys what's it called? Basically a technique called tracking, which is super useful. It's kind of a derivative of the bouncing ball, but you can use it to improve your animations and make them look better. So if I wanted to take this animation and like improve it for like something, if it was like more important, I would do that. So I'll show you now. Alright, so bouncing ball obviously would be in these rocks here. If I go frame by frame, they're just going in like the z-axis towards the camera. They're pretty much just rock-shaped balls, I guess. I don't know. What else has balls? All of these, where is it? All of these trails, you can track their heads here. Let me show you. Like you can just track their heads. These are balls pretty much, and you can animate those, and then the rest is just like these. So that one was like, if I wanted to improve that, I would basically just follow the arcs a little bit better and actually track it. Since this was like a very quick animation, I didn't do that, but I'm also scaling it up here. For some reason, I don't know why. But yeah, it's a little bit jittery, so if I wanted to really make it a lot better, I would make sure it's a lot more smooth in an arc form. It doesn't have to be perfect like an arc, but something a bit more consistent would be better. And this is what I just did, by the way. That's pretty much tracking, is instead of circling stuff, it's just using dots. A lot of animators do this. Yeah, it's a really, really good technique. So like just dotting out the stuff, because this will show you the spacing. Yeah, and this I haven't drawn it, but it's here. This will show you the spacing. Like you can tell this is obviously accelerating here. I'm gonna put this in like blue or something, or red, so that you can see it easier. But yeah, you can keep doing that and just like follow the. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much all I have to say. Not gonna lie, I really can't stand this exercise anymore. If I have to bounce for one more ball, bro, I ain't bouncing no more balls no more. Not around these parts. Not around these parts.